we gather today to commemorate and honor the life of Jim Levinson. For each of us present and those joining by live stream because the weather did not cooperate or because they live further away or for whatever reason, we join together because Jim touched our lives in one way or another. He expressed rather specific requests for his funeral to his family, and as I've learned in the last week or so, he met with Rabbi Bodney Hallis years ago to do the same. And so today's funeral service will look a little bit different than if you've been to a Jewish funeral before. And please know that that is representative of what Jim wanted and the loving care that his family has put in over the last few days to craft this service to honor him and his memory. And so I invite up Joel, his son, and we will begin.
First of all, obviously, thank you for coming in this weather and dealing with this mishugas, and for everybody who's watching from wherever they are. It means more than we can say to have you here. Okay. Jim Levinson was a Dayton Jew. In fact, Jim Levinson might be the most Dayton Jew who ever existed. Jewish? Jim Levinson thought more about Israel by noon than you have all month. On Jim Levinson's bookshelf, the only thing bigger than the Mossad section is the Nazi hunting section. The only thing bigger than the Nazi hunting section is the Israeli history section, and the only thing bigger than that is the Holocaust section, and the only thing bigger than all of that is his brother, the rabbi's entire Judaic library. And Dayton, forget about it. Born in Miami Valley Hospital, died in Miami Valley Hospital, consecrated at Temple Israel of Dayton, confirmed at Temple Israel of Dayton, fell in love at Temple Israel of Dayton. He's having his funeral here at Temple Israel of Dayton, and soon to be buried at the Temple Israel of Dayton Cemetery. This guy was so Dayton, he makes the windows at Reich's look like the windows at Lazarus. He was so Dayton, he makes the Wright brothers look like carpetbaggers. He was so Dayton, Google Maps asks him for directions around town. He was born in 1942 into an incredible, massive, and chicken-slinging family. Daytonian uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, second cousins twice removed, fourth cousins thrice removed. He was known, respected, and beloved in Dayton, and into that he came. He rolled alongside his cousin Steve Levitt in a stroller down Burroughs Drive. He ate at Meadowbrook, where his dad was the president. He hit a baseball with every kid in Dayton View at Levinson's lot. I'm not going to tell you everything about Jim Levinson up here. I'm sure I only know a small piece, and I hope that you will fill out the rest with your memories and moments over this week as my family sits Shiva, but I'll tell you some stuff I need you to know. He was raised a Jew in the shadow of the Holocaust, and it made him sad, and it filled him with a righteousness and anger that motivated him to spend his life seeking justice for those who could not speak for themselves. Others will speak more to his work inside the prosecutor's office for decades, but I can tell you what it felt like at home and when he was discussing cases and when he was working on cases with perfect penmanship on yellow legal pads, with perfectly combed jet black hair to the side. It felt like a cold fury. It felt like we were watching John Henry with a hammer in his hand. Someone who had an insane reserve of mental energy that was being fed entirely by justice for people whose lives had been taken too soon. I guess it was also being fed by 3 packs of Salem Lights a day, a pot of black coffee, and for protein, a Snickers bar. But I need you to know that the moment he walked away from that work and was with us as a dad, the man was the cuddliest, snuggliest, kissing, hugging, making time to play catch or teach his kid fencing or read a bedtime story or sing a lullaby dad you can imagine. Somehow, the engine he had was able to turn from the pursuit of justice against thieves and murderers into the world's sweetest voice reading us Homer Price, into the goofball who felt like the greatest gift the world gave us in the 1980s was VHS, so he could finally share police squad and airplane with his sons. The one who still laughed at Stan Freberg Presents the United States of America jokes he'd heard 100 times before. Excuse me. Another thing, Dad loved a deli. And the biggest tragedy of his quadruple bypass a few decades ago was that he knew an existence without any more Carnegie Deli corned beef sandwiches. Also, he loved corned beef so much that I didn't even taste pastrami until I had finished college, because he made me believe that no other beef held a candle to corned. He also loved gefilte fish with the strongest, table-banging, sinus-clearing horseradish he could get his hands on. He adored cheesecake. For the last 20 years of his life, he went from an eater to a cooker and made the most beautiful Jewish holiday meals throughout the year. He never actually sat down long enough to eat with us, but he was amazing at cooking them. But enough about Jewish. Let me tell you about the kind of open-hearted Daytonian he was. This was such an open-hearted Daytonian, he was willing to fall in love with a girl who came all the way from Youngstown. Now, to be fair, by 5 years old, she was living here in Dayton, and in fact, that's when they met in Temple Israel consecration class, Meredith Moss. By the time these two reached Fairview High School of Dayton, they had started to go steady. In classic Dayton Jewish style, her mother, Shirley Moss, said Jim Levinson wasn't good enough for her daughter. But Jim's mom, Rose, said, well, she also said he wasn't good enough for Meredith. But thank God for me, my brother, and 4 grandchildren, neither of them listened. By the time he graduated Brandeis and Meredith graduated Northwestern, they decided they'd seen just about enough the dating pool had to offer. So at 23 years old, the couple was married in a small ceremony in Augusta, Maine. I'm kidding, Dayton, Ohio. They were married in Dayton. Of course. Quick aside, Dad also at this time hopped on a peanut fishing boat to sail across the Atlantic and spend a couple months exploring the west coast of Africa as the colonial regimes were collapsing. I'm not going to tell you more about this now, but it's important for you to know because in my mind, it makes it harder to pin down exactly who 20-something Jim was and gives you a sense of his adventurousness. But let me come back to his wife, Meredith, and his marriage of 57 years. 57 years. Can you even begin to imagine the number of compromises 2 people have to make for 57 years and the kinds of love? My wife, Randy, is a couples therapist, and she uses a line that I'm going to butcher, but it's something like, in your life, you'll be married to 7 different people. With any luck, they'll all be the same person. That's exactly what Meredith Moss Levinson and James Levinson did. They had dozens of different versions of loving each other. They loved as teenagers, scribbling Mrs. Jimmy Levinson in a notebook love. They shared young, passionate newlywed love. Losing a brother and a father, love. I'm here by your side while you grieve, love. Let's go live somewhere strange and new, love. Let's settle down and make a family, love. I'll stand by your side in a world that wants to keep brilliant women like you in the shadows, love. Let's have a kid, love. Let's mourn a miscarriage, love. Let's keep trying till we have another taller kid with curlier hair. You should take the job that pays less but makes you happy, love. God help me, I have no idea how to deal with this 4-year-old, love. My children are struggling and I don't know what to do, love. Everything is overwhelming, love. Heart attack, love. Recovery, love. I can't believe your politics now, love. I can't believe how proud I am of you getting another award, love. I can't believe all the family we loved as kids are gone, love. I don't know what I'd ever do without you, love. And I'm here to say goodbye, love. In short, they filled 57 years of marriage with the kind of love and connection that most of us can only begin to imagine. Jim became a dad with Stephen and me, and became a father-in-law when he welcomed Hannah and Randy with still more loving open arms. He got another chance to rock babies and sing lullabies with the birth of his first grandchild, Morty, followed by Noah, then Hubert, and then Dahlia. And I do not know if I ever witnessed a purer joy on his face than when he held his baby grandkids. He was a voracious reader. I'm going to pause and say that there is a list of books that Jim Levinson thinks you should read outside. He was a voracious reader and a voracious watcher of America's Got Talent videos. He cried every time he watched A Wedding Story on TLC. He took road trips, a lot of them, during which time he maintained stricter control over the radio than a disciplinarian nun. He complimented freely. He mourned losses profoundly, especially that of his brother Steve. That loss sobered him. He maintained his sense of humor, but he never recovered from that loss. His memory was incredible. Every detail of a case lived inside him like an encyclopedia. He was kind. He was in the room when his own father died, and it broke his heart. He visited the sick. He used to buy the same lottery ticket number every week religiously. Then one week, with a $6 million jackpot, it was cold outside and he skipped buying the ticket. And that's the week those numbers hit. They were sitting on his desk. He never bought another lottery ticket after that. He never had a beard or mustache. He had the same hair part since he was 4 years old until his death. He looked great in a suit, and by the end he preferred denim on denim. And he was a mensch. He gave of himself and gave himself until the very end, and he was wonderful. Now, other people are going to come speak. I will sit back here to occasionally nudge them if they go on for more than 3 minutes. My mother has assured me that's important. But there is too much life for one person to tell, so I'm going to invite others who love Jim to come up and talk. First, Hannah's going to come up and read a sonnet that he loved and asked, among those many things the rabbi was talking about, be a part of this day. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Hannah. I'm Jimmy's daughter-in-law. I'm married to Stephen, his older son. And I have two short readings. The first one is a Shakespeare sonnet that Jimmy bookmarked when he was in good health. Sonnet 71. No longer mourn for me when I am dead, then you shall hear the surly sullen bell give warning to the world that I am fled from this vile world. With vilest worms do dwell. Nay, if you read this line, remember not the hand that writ it, for I love you so, that I in your sweet thoughts would be forgot, if thinking on me then should make you woe. Oh, if, I say, you look upon this verse when I perhaps compounded am with clay, do not so much as my poor name rehearse, but let your love even with my life decay, lest the wise world should look into your moan and mock you with me after I am gone. The next letter I'll read was sent in from Rose Levinson, also known as Aunt Rose, also known as Little Rose. Rose was married to Rabbi Stephen Levinson, Jimmy's beloved brother, and my husband's namesake. Jimmy, by Rose Levinson. Over 50 years ago, Jimmy's brother Steve brought me to Burroughs Drive. Sitting in a large armchair, Jimmy greeted me with curiosity and warmth. That was the beginning of our unbroken connection. It was Jimmy who comforted me when I needed it, understood my anguish. It was Jimmy and dearest Meredith who traveled often to comfort Steve and I, to bring succor to his brother. It was Jimmy who made David feel welcome when I brought him home to Dayton. It was Jimmy who took care of Stephen when he was sick in New York, who embraced his daughters Hannah and Randy, and loved his grandchildren, Morty, Hubie, Noah, and Dahlia, who shared Joel's enthusiasms, who praised and honored his beloved Meredith. Just after his 80th birthday this past June, in a handwritten note in his beautiful script, Jimmy wrote, "It's our ties that matter most, of course. Yes, my dear brother, it is, and even your leaving cannot break them."
I'd like to invite up the Honorable Barbara Gorman to say a few words.
Good morning. I met Jim Levinson when we both worked at the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office back in the late 70s. Before I got to know Jim, when I just knew who he was, I was terrified of him. Let me set the stage. Jim was a seasoned criminal prosecutor. I was a new civil prosecutor, and the two divisions didn't have much interaction. Every morning, I'd walk down the hallway of the criminal division, turn the corner, and go to my office in the civil division. And every morning, I'd pass the office of this very intense-looking man, chain-smoking cigarettes, and drinking coffee from his own personal coffee pot while he worked away. He was known to be brilliant, he was intense, and other than a quick hello, I was afraid to talk to him. Fast forward a few years. By then I had some experience dealing with various and sundry civil matters, but I was still intimidated by Jim. I was assigned a case defending a number of county employees in federal court. It was a very unique, one might say, weird case, and I wasn't sure of which way to go. Bernice Rappaport, Lee Falke's administrative assistant, and my good friend said, "You have to go talk to Jim Levinson." I wasn't crazy about that. I didn't want to do it, but she convinced me to go, so I timidly knocked on his door. He invited me in, and we started talking about my case. Jim was interested in what I had to say. I laid out the facts, and he was patient and asked great questions. He was perceptive, smart, had amazing ideas, but more importantly, he was kind, thoughtful, and as a bonus, he had a great sense of humor. I gained a new friend. For the remainder of my time in the prosecutor's office, I'd often go and talk to Jim, sometimes just to talk, sometimes about other weird cases. He became my mentor, my colleague, and my friend. In 1987, I went to the Common Pleas court bench and interacted with Jim in a different way. Jim tried a number of murder cases in front of me. As trial counsel, Jim was amazing. He was a master trial attorney. Obviously, he was always prepared, but more than that, he knew how to specifically try each case. He could intuit what was needed to explain the facts to a jury. No offense to the other trial lawyers here, he was simply the best. So Jim was a brilliant lawyer and a master trial tactician. But more importantly, he was a good, kind man, a loving, giving person. In the end, that was what was important. Thank you.
I'd like to invite up one of Dad's nephews, John Levinson, and Renata. John and Renata.
As Joel mentioned, I'm a nephew, the youngest son of Richard Dick Levinson. And I'm going to try to do a reading by Rabbi Steve Levinson and say a few words, but if I don't get through 3 words, my wife Renata is here to finish. Rabbi Stephen Neal Levinson. Our Judaism tells us that we must recognize that our single lives are so very short, that unless they are tied to something so valuable, meaningful, and more enduring than we are, they really don't have much purpose. We are led to the conclusion that the more effect we have on the lives about us and the generations that follow us, the more our own existence really does count for something. Our lives, no matter what powers and possessions, acquire meaning only in the proportion in which we communicate what we have to others. Uncle Jimmy, Aunt Meredith, Cousins Stephen and Joel have been in my thoughts all week. First, sending love to all the Levinsons. As I thought about Uncle Jimmy, a few things kept coming up, so that is what I will relate to you. Maybe there was also the connection between us of being the youngest of 3 Levinson boys. Our wedding. Renan and I asked Uncle Jimmy to officiate our wedding. As I imagine everything he did, he puts his heart fully into the service, extensive research on Jewish weddings to make the service ours. The love he put into our wedding, the beauty, the thought, the meaning, and the purpose made it a day that we will always remember. This week I looked at our ketubah, and at the bottom is Uncle Jimmy's signature. That will stay with us. We could not have asked for or imagined a better rabbi. Dayton Seder. About 12 years ago, our family came to Dayton for a Seder. It is such a strong remembrance. Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Meredith create a warm, welcoming environment filled with love. In many ways, I think my Uncle Jimmy has felt like the Levinson anchor to Dayton for us. The family, Judaism, and our connections in time, place, and religion. Boston last October. We asked Uncle Jimmy to essentially be the Levinson connection to his generation and the generation before that for my father, Uncle Jimmy's brothers, memorial and remembrance. I knew that he would connect the different pathways and paths that the Levinsons have traveled. It was a blessing to be with him, learn more about the Levinson boys, share remembrances, tears, and just be with this amazing family. We are sending all our love to the Levinsons, Aunt Meredith, Stephen, Joel, and their families.
The role of the Holocaust and the importance of Israel within Jim's life is something you have already heard. The following poem, which Courtney will render beautifully and musically, as well as one that when we are able to continue with the burial, we will hear graveside as well, came from the poet Hannah Senesh, who was known for her actions to rescue Hungarian Jews from deportation to Auschwitz as part of her service to the then British Mandate Palestine after emigrating to Israel. Not only are these words and its setting powerful, but their history adds extra meaning to them today.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו בינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המאביקים בחשכת הליל, הם שמרים לאדם הדרך, את הדרך, הם שמראים לאדם את הדרך, את הדרך, as we live our days, these are the ways we remember, as we live our days, these are the ways we remember, we remember.
I'd like to invite up Montgomery County Prosecutor Matt Heck to say a few words.
Good morning. That was beautiful. Beautiful. Today we say goodbye to our friend and colleague, Jim Levinson. Meredith, Stephen, Joel, and your entire family, on behalf of everyone in the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office and the community, Cindy and myself, I want to extend our sincere condolences. Where to begin? Now, I could speak for hours about Jim Levinson, because we spent 27 years together. But I do, have a limitation, I'm told, on my time, so I will limit it not more than an hour. Larry Lassie said to tell you that since I am a law enforcement officer, I do pack, so don't hold me to that 3-minute thing, okay? Jim joined the staff of the prosecutor's office in June of 1973, being hired by Lee Falke. Now, it's interesting because John Cumming started the same day, and I mentioned John Cumming because John and Jim sort of had a parallel path. They were good friends. They practiced together not only in the prosecutor's office, but in civil practice together, and they both returned to the prosecutor's office. But I remember the day they started well, because I had an office, a meager office on the 3rd floor of the county courts building at that time, and Jim and John were actually assigned cubicles, and I say that from the best, a desk outside of my office where they did their thing right there. And over the years, both have commented that they were stuck at a desk outside of my office, yet they got superb training from me, even though my door was closed, by overhearing my phone calls with defense attorneys, recalcitrant witnesses, and things like that. So they never let me forget what they called, if they ever made a mistake, it was my fault. So after about 4 years, Jim resigned, or as I always say, took a long leave of absence to join Coolidge, Wall, Walmsley, and Lombard, where he practiced civil litigation for 7.5 years. In September of 1984, Jim returned to the prosecutor's office. And thereafter, so many times, he continuously was promoted and given more responsibility, more authority, and helped run the office. He became trial counsel, as Barbara Gorman said, and eventually was chief of our criminal division. He retired in 2007 after almost 27 years of service to our community. A loving husband, an exceptional and proud father and grandfather, trusted friend, superb lawyer, humble, and wonderful man. He had opinions, beliefs, and convictions of which, if asked, he had no hesitation to share. But Jim was a prosecutor's prosecutor. He enjoyed being an attorney, but he loved, thrived, and excelled in being a prosecuting attorney. Jim was dedicated, loyal, and cared for deeply by his co-workers. He was known in our office for his sharp intellect, quick wit, unequaled, dedicated work ethic, and plain common sense. Jim had a unique insight into how to view a problem or a legal issue, and he would bring new perspectives that challenged everyone to look at things differently. And it's interesting on the very many conversations that we had, not just about law, not just about the prosecutor's office, about life, about things that were going on now in the world. He really had a different perspective and challenged you to look at things differently. Jim had a very positive impact on many lives in addition to his family. New attorneys would go to Jim with a question, whether it was about the law or how to deal with an unexpected issue, especially in trials. In Jim's typical fashion, he would very rarely give the answer. Instead, he would often pose a question, and that would sort of force you to find the answer. This made Jim a prolific teacher. Truly, Jim shared his unmatched expertise as a lawyer-prosecutor to better others, to better those around him, and the lawyers he worked with. Jim was firm in demanding justice, yet he was compassionate, polite, professional, and always a gentleman. Victims loved Jim's strength and commitment to their plight. Defense attorneys, not so much. Not so much at all. But I will tell you, they admired him and respected him. And judges appreciated his zeal, hard work, professionalism, and legal skills. The list of high-profile cases handled by Jim is much too lengthy to mention here. But I will mention two, because I think many of you here will remember. One, we remember by the victim's name, and that is the Lester Emhoff case, that many of us remember quite well. And the other is the Christmas killings that he prosecuted. But I can assure you the number of letters going through his file that both Lee Falke and I received from victims, victims' families, and police officers are a testament to the successful pursuit of justice and the ability to make this a better and safer place to live due to Jim Levinson. After Jim retired, he would return to the office, and I would see him in the conference room in jeans and cowboy boots, which the first time I saw that, because he'd never dressed down before. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm enjoying life." And I was so happy for him. But he would show up in the conference room, pore over old cases, files, because he was preparing to appear before the parole board to voice objection to one of the many murderers that he prosecuted from being released. The families of those victims were so appreciative, as were we, that Jim was steadfast in his belief and stayed with the case even after retirement. He attended our holiday party this past December, and the staff, all of us, thoroughly enjoyed seeing him, chatting with him, and just being with him. And a few of us had the pleasure of having dinner this past New Year's Eve, just several weeks ago, with Jim and Meredith. We actually moved it up so he could return in order to babysit that evening. But it was a very delightful evening, talking, getting caught up, and recalling and sharing stories about past cases. It was wonderful. I know I speak for all the prosecutor's office employees when I say that he will truly be missed, but never forgotten. Jim, thank you for everything that you've done as a dedicated public servant, and most of all, for being a true good friend of mine. We love you. God bless you. Thank you.
I'd like to invite up some nieces, nephew from the Moss side here to speak. Or just one nephew, apparently. Okay.
I'm Yoni Moss, Jim and Meredith's nephew from Jerusalem, Israel. The Latin word use has bequeathed our English language with numerous words having to do with the law and what is right. Just, justice, jury, juror, judge, judiciary, etc., etc. They all stem from this Latin word. In Latin, use means justice, but etymologically it is itself derived from a word that denotes oath-taking. Why does Latin, and by extension our English language, found its notion of justice on oath-taking? I think this is because oaths are how we express the constancy of our word, and it is that constancy that is the essence of justice. James Levinson was, as we all know, and as we have been hearing so beautifully, a man of the law, a man of justice. He carried out his profession so well because in his very person he was a just man. Not only in that sense of that what he did was right, but also more fundamentally in this etymological sense of the word. He was a man of his word, a man of constancy, of dependability. Jim's constancy manifested in a myriad of ways. Fiercely loyal to his people, his ardent support of Israel knew no bounds. As citizens of Israel, we Mosses have always been grateful for that steadfast dedication to the Jewish state. How appropriate it was when we sang, upon Meredith's suggestion, Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, around Jim's deathbed hours before he took his last breath. I don't need to tell you, dear friends and family, how fiercely loyal Jim was to his wife, to his children, to his grandchildren, to his family, to his friends. No doubt you have all experienced this, each in your own way. I will limit my words to one aspect of our own Moss perspective on this salient aspect of Jim's personality. In doing so, I represent my father, Meredith's brother David, and my two sisters, Ariella and Jackie, who are here with me, as well as my third sister, Elisa, who is in Jerusalem, and our spouses, Saskia, Dovi, Nachum, and Phil, together with our children. And I would also like to think, together with my late mother, Rosalind. Uncle Jimmy, as we call him, has been in charge of shopping, cooking, and cleaning for close to 2 decades at the Levinson home. We Mosses keep kosher. Uncle Jimmy did not. He didn't believe in it. He didn't believe in the kosher dietary system. But being a man of his word, if he invited you into his house, he would bend over backwards to make sure you felt at home. And if his guests, such as us, kept kosher or had other dietary restrictions such as vegetarianism or gluten sensitivities, he sprang into action every time we came, going to extreme lengths to feed us and make us feel not only comfortable, but wanted, and not only wanted, but wanted again and again. Our Uncle Jimmy's feats of hospitality became a thing of legend in our family. He created an entire kosher kitchen down in the basement. Prior to our visits, he would also kosher the oven and microwave in the main kitchen, and he stocked up the house with kosher food. He cooked all our meals, provided all our snacks, and did all our dishes, all in accordance with the strictest requirements of Jewish law. He needed to learn those laws, which of course he did off the internet meticulously, following the most stringent interpretations, so much so that on occasion he even censured me for cutting corners in my kosher observances. Such a man was Jim. He could not conceive of halfway commitments. Commitment, like loyalty, like justice, had to be absolute. Thank you, dear Uncle Jimmy, for your hospitality, for your commitment to us, your family. You have taught us how the seemingly mundane act of taking someone into your home, not on your terms, but on theirs, is an act of justice just as much as it is the truest form of love. Although your consciousness, dear uncle, is no longer, your exemplary conscience lives on among all those who were touched by it.
Dear Dad, when I was writing my bar mitzvah speech downstairs on Burroughs Drive, you were with me, helping me form into words what I wanted to say. Writing a toast before my wedding night to my dear Hannah, who you love so much, you were with me, staying up late in the Brooklyn Marriott, helping me express what was in my heart. I don't know how to write this without your help. Complicating the matter, you are not an easy man to characterize, full of so many wonderful contradictions. You were, of course, the prosecutor, as we've heard, confident, intimidating, chain-smoking, full of conviction, but you were also a total softy who, as Joel said, couldn't witness a wedding, real or fictional, without crying. I remember on a family trip to Rome, we passed a church in the distance, total strangers getting married. I turned to you, and you were absolutely bawling. You were the quintessential homebody who spent most of his adult life in the same house he was born in. Whatever you were doing, wherever you were, we could be pretty sure you'd rather be at home on the couch with a book. But you were also an adventurer who wandered Africa alone after college, dragged mom to the young state of Israel for a year, and who loved the free wandering of the cross-country road trips Joel introduced you to later in life. For years, you were always in a dark business suit, but you were also happy to wear a pair of white jockey shorts on your head to make your kids laugh. You voraciously kept up on the latest news of the world, but part of your heart was always in the past. At the poultry store with your father, talks with your dear brother Steve, idyllic baseball games in Levinson's lot. Justice was your calling, and as we've heard, you pursued it relentlessly, but you never showed your children anything other than love, understanding, and compassion. You spanked me exactly one time, it didn't hurt at all, and then you cried, I didn't. True. You introduced us to modern dance, the sculpture of Rodin, and the plays of Tom Stoppard, but you were somehow more excited about bringing us to Tinkertown, a roadside tourist trap in New Mexico. And if Jews did cremation, we'd be scattering your ashes there. You had impeccable taste in comedy and exposed Joel and me to the films, books, and records that would set the course of our lives, from Police Squad to Nichols and May to Alan Sherman. But God forgive me, your jokes were terrible. You were the model of propriety, never forgetting a thank you note, a stickler for etiquette. But you were also a rebel, talking back to teachers, bristling at authority, and never ceding an inch in your unrelenting war of attrition against your car's seatbelt warning beep. Unless your grandchildren told you to buckle up, and then you did it instantly. You ordered meals en français from sophisticated Manhattan bistros, but savored chocolate cake from Bill Knapp's, packs of Twizzlers, and Old Country Buffet. An atheist who'd eat a BLT on Yom Kippur and pancakes on Pesach, you also insisted on doing a full Seder and the long Kiddush on Friday nights. Your Judaism was as essential to your sense of self as any Jew who ever lived. You were forever a pessimist, a kvetch, and a cynic, but never in my life have I seen anyone experience more pure, unadulterated joy than you as you held each of your grandchildren in your arms for the very first time. If my father was here with me right now, I can almost hear him leaning in and whispering in my ear, "Boy, this funeral is taking too long." Mom's lying. Sorry, Dad. I've gone on for pages and pages, and I've still left out so much. Your beautiful and frequent handwritten letters of love to your family, your constant criticism of your own cooking, your lifelong romance with Mom, the way when I was in the hospital you'd gently stroke my head for hours, and on and on and on and on. So many sides of you. I was lucky to see more than most. Each one a blessing I will treasure forever. I love you, Dad.
Mom promised me that if I came up here and gave the eulogy as a host before, I could come back up here now and do it as a son. That stuff I said before, that's the things I think you should know. This is the part that I want to say. In many ways, eulogizing my dad is shockingly easy. The man was capable of true, unconditional love, full stop. All the rest is commentary on this. There has not been a single day in my life when I questioned my father's love for me. We came together, we fought, we argued and agreed. We thought we were each right when we definitely weren't. We saw eye to eye, we totally failed to understand each other, all of it. And not 1 second did I doubt that he loved me completely. The greatest blessing I could wish on any one of you is to know what it's like to feel truly loved in the way I felt loved by this man. The greatest gift I could ever offer another is to love in the way he showed me how to love. Absolutely, completely, and without reservation. His memory is a blessing, and it is a blessing of love. I love my father. I always will, and I know that he loved me. I will miss him, and I am grateful for every day I had him here.
To repeat some of the words from Jim's brother, the rabbi, that we heard earlier, and I want to make sure you heard them. Our Judaism tells us that we must recognize our single lives are so very short that unless they are tied to something so valuable, meaningful, and more enduring than we are, they really don't have much purpose. In this sense, Jim's life had purpose and meaning through the effect he had on all of us, all of those who are here in spirit. Jim sought meaning and quested alongside us, and that word quest comes from another quote that I won't share with you, but I didn't pull it out of thin air. In all aspects of his life, he connected with his family, with the justice system, with Israel, with history, and with more, as you have heard. He found answers in his life to spiritual questions and life's questions that worked for him. May we learn from his life. May we carry his lessons and his love in our hearts as we continue forward on our own journeys through this life. So we conclude this portion of our service. I hope that you are able to reflect on his love, his life, his memory, and honor and cherish it in a way that will always make it a blessing. And just before we conclude, we'll recite the words of El Malei Rachamim, a traditional Jewish prayer. If you are able, I invite you to stand in body or in spirit.
El Malei Rachamim shochen bamromim amtzim menucha nechona tachat chanfi hashchina im gerushim uturim gezur harakia maziri את נשמת יעקב בן יהודה ורייזל הכהן שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויתרור בתרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
You may be seated. Our service will conclude here rather than be continuing at Riverview Cemetery. Details for the burial will come as we figure out what is possible with the weather. Shiva will be observed at the Levinson home from 5:30 to 7:30 nightly this week, with a Mariv minyan around 7 p.m. each night. On behalf of the family, I thank you all for being here, and please allow them to exit first and follow behind them. Thank you.
Steht in Felder Bremele, hat es grüne Zwiegele, sitzt der Räufer Fegele, macht es zu den Jägele, häuft die grüne Zwiegele, wächst der goldene Bälle, macht zu schlafen schein die Fegelech, die Mane singt sie, ja, 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 sie sagt